Hello and welcome back. Welcome to From the Heart. I'm your host, Bernita Jackson, and today I have four new friends and colleagues joining me. Today we are going to talk about the care in foster care. We're talking about our beloved community and the children in that community. We're also celebrating this month, the month of May, is National Foster Parent Month. We are celebrating those volunteers, those parents who are so loving and giving of their homes into inviting children into their homes, loving them, nurturing them. It is quite a sacrifice, and we celebrate them. So let me introduce you to my new friends. If you were to look, I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Dee Dee Artist. She is the director of Douglas County Department of Family and Children Services. She hails from Akron, Ohio, and she is a graduate of the University of Akron. Sitting right next to her is Millicent Houston. She comes to us from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she is the permanency administrator for foster care and adoption at Douglas County Department and Family and Children Services. Sitting right next to me in this beautiful blue is my new friend. This is Judge Natalia Nurse. She is a graduate of the University of Georgia Law School. She is the associate judge in Douglas County for juvenile court. And certainly my new friend right here on the end is Katie Hilbert. She is the administrator of Children's Voice CASA Incorporated, a graduate of the University of Georgia. So we invite you in, ladies, call your friends, call your relatives. We are about to have a conversation you don't want to miss. As we begin to talk about our children, our most precious among us, sometimes there are situations in our families that require help from the beloved village. And in this case, it would be foster care. So, Dee Dee, I'm going to ask you, tell us what we look like in Douglas County in terms of numbers, in terms of foster parents here in our region.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to come here and have this discussion amongst each other. I do want to say that we currently have 220 children in foster care in Douglas County. There's a little over 8,000 children in foster care in the state of Georgia right now. As far as foster parents, we have 47 homes currently that are certified Douglas County DFACS homes. But I do want people to understand that when we mention 47 homes, some of those are kinship homes, which are relative homes. Some may just be designated for adoption homes, and then others would be for foster parents.
Absolutely. So, speaking of all the different types of homes, many of our listeners or viewers this afternoon, Millicent, they want to understand how is it that I get involved with this department. We understand that your department is always looking for loving parents or loving folks in our community to assist with these children that have the need of needing someone to parent and care for them.
Absolutely. We actually have pre-service training on Tuesdays where you have an opportunity to find out more information. We've actually gone online as well. And so I think that information may have been provided to you all in terms of how to contact. But let me tell you a little bit about the types
Sure.
of families
Absolutely.
that we'll need. And I think maybe if you have a better understanding of who our population is, that may help as well. So about 40%, 39% of our young people that are in custody right now are 14 or older. And so, and they're coming sometimes with challenges, behavioral health needs, developmental disabilities. Some are behind in school already. And so for us, and only 26% of our population is between the ages of 0 and 5. And so we're looking for folks who are patient,
Mhm.
who are willing to mentor and guide and support some of our older youth.
Okay.
But there's always the need for people who will love children of any age.
So if I'm a single parent and let's say I have a child, can I still be a foster parent?
Absolutely. Playmate.
Absolutely.
We love that.
Oh, good, good. So, Katie, so every child that comes into the system, as I understand it, gets to have someone from your department help represent them. Help us understand what CASA does.
Yes, that is absolutely the goal for each child in foster care to have a court-appointed special advocate. And our volunteers are everyday people who have been trained and are supported by CASA to make sure that that child has everything that they need while they're in care. They advocate for their best interest, and we get the pleasure of serving at a judge nurse's court, and that means that our volunteers go to court, help provide unbiased information to judge nurse so that she has all the information she has that she needs, and that we really just act as a safety net to ensure that that child gets what they need and that they're not falling through the cracks. And so we absolutely need more volunteers, always. We're always recruiting. And we have a pre-service training requirement, and I believe we've given all of the information on our website.
Absolutely. So as we end our program, you all will be able to see contact information for Department of Family and Children's Services and for CASA. Now, Judge Nurse, you are the gatekeeper for juvenile. Policies are set. And so many that are watching us this afternoon, they don't know that before a child comes into care, that there really has to be someone looking at that. But as I understand it, the juvenile judge holds a really unique place in our community, not just from the judicial standpoint, but from the advocacy and from a very caring standpoint. Can you kind of tell us how you interface with this department and CASA as well?
So I'd like to think that we operate as sort of a team approach with the vast majority of cases that we see. The end goal is to get that child or children back home. Foster care is meant to be temporary to allow the parents or caregivers to address the issues, whether it be substance use, mental health issues, those sorts of things. And once they have done that and we've seen behavior change and it's safe for those kids to go back, that's what we ideally like to do. I will say that, yes, I am one of the gatekeepers, but I do have a chief judge who appointed me. And so it's two of us, Judge Michelle Harrison. We are both on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's not uncommon for some of our DFACS caseworkers to call and say, hey, Judge, I've got an emergency. This is what we're asking for. And they all know Judge Harrison and I well enough now to know, okay, these are the questions that I'm going to ask you. Have you tried to identify relatives or another adult who may have a commitment to this child? Have you reached out to dad's relatives? Have you absolutely beaten the bush to try to think of other alternatives so that we don't have to send a child into foster care? So they usually do a really good job of answering those questions for us. And when it's absolutely necessary, then it's absolutely necessary, and we will enter the order to remove that child to foster care. You and I, Bernita, were talking a little bit before the show about, there's a misconception that DFACS is just on the prowl and they're looking to come and take children. That could not be further from the truth. Because those of us who have been immersed in child welfare law understand the dynamics and how traumatic removal can be for a child. To us, we see the problems with the parents and we're saying, oh, this isn't safe to you. But to that child, that's mom or dad. I love them no matter what's going on. And so we absolutely try our best to remedy that and look at alternatives before we do that.
Today, chopped steak. We're gonna have that 40 weight gravy on it and those chopped onions, and we're gonna slather that over some white rice. And man, I got this knock your socks off Bacardi rum pound cake. Y'all ready to eat? Let's go.
A lot of times the best students don't make the best financial decisions. We work with a lot of medical residents. Typically, if we don't catch them in residency and we catch them after they've been in position for a couple of years, we find them that they've made a lot of bad financial decisions. On the flip side of that, we've seen that a lot of our entrepreneurs, they weren't necessarily the best students in school because they were more focused on trying to have a much broader knowledge base.
So you were mentioning family preservation, Dee Dee, and I guess Millicent. What happens when this child, say, is placed into care? But what is happening with the family? What's happening with mom and dad? What opportunities or what is happening with them while we have a child placed into with a foster parent?
There's well, their family preservation efforts
Okay.
to literally preserve the family, but there is a family preservation program, and those are our intact families. And so an investigator has gone out, they've assessed the situation, and they've determined that, you know, the safety level or the safety threat doesn't rise to the level that we need to remove the child from the home. So they can stay in the home with a plan, with a safety plan, and then that's monitored. However, when children are removed, that parent or parents receive a case plan, and so they have to regularly work through those issues that, and it's monitored every 6 months. We go back in court and we monitor their progress to see how they're progressing towards their case plan goals, and we're on a time frame. And so that's it's possible that we may even go into court more frequently, depending on what's going on with the case. We have up to 12 months to reunify family members, and if we don't see that progress, if people haven't substantially complied with the case plan and there's still safety threats for the child, then we may have to look at alternatives.
Okay. So that brings us to another point. Years ago, children could enter the foster care system at 2, and at age 6, they were still in that system. So it sounds like that over the years, there has been some different policies and protocols that a child can only be within that system so long. So how do you balance that? Because we know, as we mentioned earlier, it's very traumatic to remove a child, but it is equally traumatic for a child to stay in limbo. So from the bench, Judge Nurse, what happens? You know, when do we hit the point that we have to move on to look at more permanency plan for a child?
Well, I think as a court system, Douglas County Juvenile Court does a really good job of, as well as DFACS, in having a concurrent plan. So what that means is when a family comes in front of me, a child is removed, the goal is reunification, but we also have a concurrent plan or a backup plan, which is if reunification is not successful for some reason, what's going to be the plan for this child? Is it going to be permanent guardianship? Is it going to be termination and adoption? What are the things that we're looking at? So we start very early on at the outset of the case in looking at those types of issues. And I will say we rely heavily on our CASA volunteers. As a matter of fact, I am swearing in a cohort tomorrow morning. But they are unique in the sense of, you know, we are very heavy with attorneys in juvenile court. So there's an attorney for mom, an attorney for dad, an attorney for child, an attorney for custodian. And so CASA is unique in the sense of, you know, we're all here bickering about the issues, and sometimes you lose sight and lose focus of what you need to kind of hone in on, and they're the ones going, hey, judge, you know, this is what we think will best serve this child, and this is what we think this child needs. Or mom and dad are not making progress on their case plan, but you know what, this child has a rapport with their school teacher, and school teacher is an option for permanency. You know, here's what we're proposing and recommending. So we do try to initiate and look early on, just in case mom and dad aren't successful, what are we going to do so that we can, if at all possible, eliminate a child lingering in foster care.
So you mentioned that the majority currently of your children that are in care are adolescents. And so we know adolescence can be a difficult time for the child and for the parent. So given that, many families want what they perceive as young children, or, you know, when they're kind of still cute and fluffy. And so adolescence is a bit different because it depends on what phase we're in this week. You know, we may be in a dark phase this week and we may be a flower child by next week. So how is it that with an adolescent that you're able to get them into forever homes? Because I realize that many people who are looking to adopt or to foster for a long period really often favor the younger child. So what is it that you have to do to prepare the community to understand that these adolescents really need?
There's so many opportunities to mold and grow with those older youth. I'm also an adoptive mother, and I met my daughter through DFACS at age 14. So for me, I can sell it because I believe it. Right. It's they're more independent. Mm-hmm. There are levels of engagement that you can have with your adolescent that you're not going to be able to have with your 4-year-old that mm-hmm. you can have with a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old. And so I find them hilarious. They keep me young. They explained to me what CAP was. Mm-hmm. I thought that was something mm-hmm. that goes on your head. But they, in terms of just, some of it's just a matter of who you have a heart for. Okay. I do have a heart for teens. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's very easy. That's not a difficult one, but I do think it requires it's a preference. And actually, when we have our foster parents to go through pre-service mm-hmm. training, we ask them about their preferences. Okay. Are you interested in adopting? Okay. What age group are you interested in? Because we do want it to be a good fit.
Okay. So, Katie, when you're training CASA volunteers, and particularly we're looking, let's say, for the adolescents or for the medically fragile child, do those volunteers need to bring a special skill set with them?
So we absolutely do have volunteers who have a medical background, and that, you know, we would put with a child that may have medical needs, but the volunteers don't have to come with any special background. right? That's just kind of a bonus that they do
Okay.
have that. And we will train volunteers. We provide 30 hours of classroom training, and it really prepares them to understand not only the juvenile court process, but the Department of Family and Children's Services and trauma, right? I think that's what we're all talking about.
Absolutely.
Is the trauma that our children experience, and how we can support them and how we can assist them and make them a whole child and a whole family, and be a part of that beloved community that you spoke about.
Absolutely.
So no, volunteers don't have to have any special background. However, we always are looking for men to be a part of our volunteer pool, because as you can see, child welfare, like a lot of areas that are child-centered, are often female-dominated, right? All of the
Absolutely.
leaders here are female, and so we do have teen boys, who may only have a foster mother and a female caseworker and a female attorney and a female judge and a female CASA, and we might be missing an opportunity to support them in their needs. So we always want to place the right volunteer with the right child.
Well, at first, I think they thought that he was imaginary.
Her dad, he kind of accepted me right off. It was like we were almost like we already knew each other. But Mama, I tease her till this day. I say, you ain't even like me.
Once he won over my grandmother, I think my mama and Auntie Janice and everybody, like now, like they'll take Jake before they take me.
Can't do no wrong.
He can do no wrong.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Can we actually trust the information that we're receiving about COVID-19? And can we trust the vaccine itself as it relates to people of color?
I feel so intimately connected to this topic of mistrust as it relates to the African American community because of the unethical practices of the past that we've experienced. As far as trusting the information that we receive about the vaccine, I would advise persons listening is to consider the source of your information.
If I want to volunteer, and let's say I'm a male, how can I volunteer to assist a child that's in foster care?
Well, I think for us, from the DFAC's point of view, we're always looking for mentors.
Okay.
Our kids need outlets. They need connections, positive connections. And I think sometimes adult males who may be involved with sports can bring those kids in and have that fellowship, but also have the connections and the outlet and the encouragement and just modeling positive behaviors to these, especially our young men, our young men, youth. I think it's really important. But even for our females, we have a lot of females, when we're talking about the kids that are coming into our care, they've experienced trauma.
Yes.
And as Judge Nurse had alluded, it is still their mom and dad, but we see that mom and dad has some things to work on and may not have allowed a healthy environment for these kids to grow up to be healthy adults. And so it's really important that, especially our teenagers, that they're getting connected with healthy adults while mom and dad are working on themselves. And so that way, they can learn those skills as they're remaining in our foster care, so that when they do return home, as our first goal is that, you know, they can take those learned lessons and apply them when they're back home with mom and dad. And then mom and dad can support these kids in growing even further into adulthood. So it's really important that we have volunteers or mentors, you know, boys and girls clubs. There's other mentor programs out there. I know that Millicent and her team is always looking for mentors to help with our youth. And so, you know, some of these providers out in our community that provide that opportunity for those volunteers would be awesome.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about grandparents, because grandparents are another layer. If I'm a grandparent and now I want to foster a child, is that a possibility?
Absolutely. You can foster your own grandkids. Sometimes that happens. Or if you've raised your kids and you have a heart full and maybe some empty bedrooms, we encourage you to participate as well. You can be as young as 25, and I don't know that we've set an age limit on how old you need our to foster.
Well, that's amazing, because I think there are folks in the community that are probably watching now that understand that there is a problem, but didn't understand the depth of the problem. So help me understand resources for these young people. So if I foster a adolescent, one who has experienced trauma, we know trauma is either experienced or witnessed, and most of the children, I'm sure, fall in one of those two categories. Are there resources to help me help this child move into a healthier state?
Nearly all of our children that are in custody are participating in some type of therapy, individual therapy, family therapy. Coming into custody is traumatic in and of itself. So just to address that out-of-home experience, we find it's necessary to link children to individual therapy, sometimes group therapy, and also just to expose them and give them some other opportunities for some normalcy. Kind of going back to that mentoring component. A lot of our young people, because they've been exposed to a lot of the human services professionals, I hear them saying, oh, I want to be a social worker, I want to be a psychologist, I want to, you know, something associated with the foster care experience. When we have individuals coming to us from different backgrounds to come alongside our young people, it opens their mind to maybe some other opportunities. And it's amazing the difference that a caring adult, caring, committed adult can make in a child's life.
Okay. And I would also add, with the foster parents, they also build a support system amongst themselves. Here in Douglas County, we have a Douglas County Foster Parent Association, which provides support to the foster parents. They also, within our region in the state of Georgia, we have a 24-hour conference line, phone line, that foster parents can call and actually speak to another foster parent within the region if they're having trouble dealing with a certain particular behavior of a child, or they have some questions about medication, or, you know, maybe want to find resources for the child in their home. They're just not sure where to look for them. So they can call this host line and state their question, and it'll be answered by a peer of theirs. So we tried to provide support to our foster parents. I think we all agree that foster parenting is tough. And so, you know, they need just as much support as, you know, the parents or the children or the foster care staff that do the work. They need that support too, and that's offered to them.
So, Judge Nurse, these identified resources, is it just something that is on a plan that would be a good idea, or does those resources or the request for those resources come down by order? Is that something that comes back to your court and is reviewed and then placed as a matter of something that the court is going to monitor?
So typically, when we come back for periodic reviews of a case, the guardians at Litem and CASA have filed reports giving the court an update of what's going on with the child. The child's having certain behaviors that need to be addressed, and what's recommended. Or foster parent, they have the right to speak and be heard when they are appearing for hearings. And so I give them that floor and that opportunity because they are the ones who are living with that child day to day. And if they have concerns about a certain behavior or a recommendation, then we hear them, and we have a dialogue about what needs to happen and what needs to be ordered. If the child needs an updated psychological assessment, or maybe a medication change may be appropriate. So absolutely, we keep that dialogue open for them to discuss those things with us, and we can often either update our case plans or put that in an order that those things and services need to happen.
Wonderful. So what happens to our children? I came into foster care later. Now I'm high school graduation. I'm about to age out. What happens?
Young people are actually allowed to sign themselves back into custody voluntarily and can remain in care up till age 21. There are a number of supports that are available for our older youth. Actually, any of our youth between ages of 14 and 21, we have what's called an independent living program, and they provide tutoring support services, life skills training, post-secondary education assistance. There's any number of, there's individual development accounts where they actually match funds that the young people earn. So they do what they can to help them to have a successful transition to adulthood.
That sounds amazing. So ladies, one thing that we know that our children, it is a village, and it's going to take this community to rally around our children to place them in healthy and happy environments. So as we come to a conclusion for this discussion, Dee, tell me, what is it that you would like for our community to know about the foster care program here in Douglas County?
What I'd like to know is, first I want to just kind of give a shout out to Millicent and her team. I mean, we could not do this without her team. The hard work that these case managers and these supervisors put in with providing services to families, to parents and adults, to making sure that children are safe in foster care, and then assessing when it's safe to be returned back home. Just the countless hours, evenings and weekends that they put in is just astronomical. So I want to say that thanks to Millicent and her team for that. We have a really good group working. I think our staff really have a heart to be in this field. They want the best for these kids. They will advocate for their children. Many of the case managers, to them, it's their child.
Right.
And that's how they view the child. And they will advocate for such and go toe-to-toe with someone who may be arguing differently. So, we really do have the best interest of our children. We have services that are available in Douglas County for our parents in working on the concerns or the issues that have been identified that places the children in a unsafe environment, so that we can work toward keeping them on track to move these kids back home. And our whole goal is, as Judge Nurse indicated, foster care is meant to be temporary. It is not meant to be long-term. Our goal is to have these children seek permanency within 12 months of coming into care. So there's a lot of hard work that's going on in the beginning to get services started. And, we're just working toward achieving the permanency for our kids and supporting our foster parents through this process.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are so glad that I got to introduce you to my 4 new friends and colleagues. We're talking today about care of those that are most precious to us, those children in our community and foster care. At the end of this program, there will be information. If you want to be part of the solution, part of our beloved community, part of the village, please reach out to these ladies. These are the ladies that are really carrying the advocacy banner and the care for our children in this community. Again, this is From the Heart. All of the matters of life come from the heart. I am your host, Pranita Jackson, and I am so glad that you tuned in to be with us.
Thank you.